welcome to the 1111 podcast. So glad that you exist. Let us join together with a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Release the chaos, the tension, the bullshit, the drama, the things that don't serve you. Because it's the first of the month. If you're catching this live, I want to thank you for sending in those topic requests. And if it's your first time being here, I want to welcome you. And for all the returning guests, let's keep the party going. So, everything is everything. Everything is interconnected and intertwined. And with that, if anyone out there would like to be a guest or nominate someone to be a guest, please reach out. You can find me on social media. You can hit me up via email. And I would love to collaborate with you as well in any way that we see possible. So it's been a lot of shifts in energy, shifts in seasons, shifts in power. And it all goes back to one at the end of the day. Because separation is the greatest illusion. And so I want to remind us all that the greatest source, the greatest power is love. It's not fear, it's not coercion, it's not manipulation, it's not so-called false power. The only true power is love. And when you wield that power, everything just aligns. And you don't have to worry when you trust in that power of love. So we have started the season of March, the month of March. And March, just as February in the Americas continent is celebrating Black History, March celebrates women's history. So to start off, to kickstart this month, I wanted to honor a fictional character that was based on real events that occurred. So the first Women Crush Monday, the first, not even a Monday, right? It's a Sunday, but the first women's history that I want to honor goes to a movie that I recently saw. One of my soul tribes put me on to this movie called Alice. And this movie, Alice, is about those who were enslaved in the 20th century, or the 21st century. So all the way up into 1960, over 100 years after slavery had ended, a group of people in a certain state decided to, I believe it was Louisiana, decided to continue the narrative of slavery. And they had African Americans there under the guise of, not even under the guise, because it was no disguise, it was literally lies. And they were convinced that they didn't know their own history, you know. And so I don't want to spoil the movie, but it is on Netflix. So please watch it. It stars Keke Palmer, and Common, the rapper artist, is also in it as well. I think it was a phenomenal job. I think this movie should have gotten a lot more attention. And, initially when I was watching it, I was like, oh boy, it's another slavery movie. Oh boy, that's the only history that we want to focus on. Like, okay then. But as the movie evolved, it has a lot of twists and turns that are very empowering and very, it's a psychological thriller to say the least. And the abuse that people have experienced. See, when we experience pain, it opens a door for trauma and demonic energy to enter, but it also, the wound is where the light enters. So it also can be a great source of wisdom and empowerment. And in this movie, you'll see that. So recommendation for this month, for this kickstart of the women's history, is going back to the movie Alice and watching that. So there's a lot of energy, right? Always. And especially as things start to get shaken up again. It's like a soda can. there's a lot that's going on. There's a lot that's not being spoken about. And you might feel it in the ethers, these energies. You might feel them. And energies are being severed right now. There's a severance happening. And part of that severance that happened is something that has happened energetically speaking, but also physically speaking. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to name this episode the title that I'm going to go with, or if I wanted to focus on the actual tectonic plates that have shifted, the one continent that we all come from, Pangea. Pangea was a supercontinent where all the continents were all formed together as one. And you can see that when you see the outline of Africa and how it looks like it fits perfectly in Europe, in Middle Eastern countries, how the shape is perfectly indented. And that is reminiscence to remind us that we all come from the same place of Pangea. Because at the end of the day, we are all one. We are all souls having a human experience, spirits having a human experience. And part of that human experience is to experience division and separation and all of the range of emotions that we experience. So for eons, we have been coerced, manipulated, deluded, and under a delusion based on our shared history being eradicated. So if you want to keep people from awakening, you keep information away from them. You keep truth away from them. You keep them separate. Because when you start to talk to other people who have different experiences, that helps expand. And there's a sacred text that refers to the story of the Tower of Babel, which was when all humanity was coming together and they wanted to basically see the gods. So they started building this tower leading up into the sky. And supposedly the powers that be knocked this tower down and spread everyone out. That created races and also created language, different language and different barriers to prevent us from communicating with one another. Now as we have it, we have technology, we have different things where we can learn each other's languages, we can translate, we can use apps and such, and all these different things to help bridge that communication gap. So we have the propensity to be just as powerful and actually utilize that energy not for destruction, but actually for collaboration. And some people may want to collaborate on destruction. Who knows, right? But, oh no. My recording just stopped. Hold on. My hand actually accidentally hit it. Hold on, let's see. Can I get it back? It's going to be 2 recordings. Okay, well. Oh wow, now it's just automatically stopping. Oh snap. Let's see. Am I doing that or is it doing it on its own? Sorry about that technological bump there. There is, I'm not talking about Coke, but there is Mercury retrograde happening right now, so it's expected to be a little bit turbulent right now. However, this Tower of Babel was utilized to overthrow, if you will. Now, if we use that same power to actually realize that the chessboard is actually placed on everyone's back right now by the few that are playing the game. And all we have to do is stand up and the chessboard falls. So if we all actually collaborated for the greater good, there could be greater good to happen. Now, what we all might imagine is greater good can vary. So who's to say what greater good is? Because everyone has their own interpretation of what that might look like. But at the end of the day, we all are one. Regardless of our differences, regardless of our opinions, regardless of our flaws and insecurities and the ways we hurt each other and the ways we will fall short of, we will all fail each other. You know, regardless of all of that, we share that all same experience. And it's through our shared experience that we speak the same language. That's why music is the universal language, because you feel it. In the same way that you can feel people who are genuine, you can feel people who are trustworthy. You feel all of these things because we speak the language of feeling. Now, when a culture or society tells you certain feelings are okay, certain feelings are not, they get pushed into the shadow and are not explored and are misunderstood. And that leaves a vacancy within ourselves to not understand ourselves fully. So for example, if you are a biological male and you're told that crying makes you weak, and that is something to be embarrassed of or ashamed of, you have now perhaps severed part of yourself from those emotions. And that is actually limiting you from having a human experience, because it's a human expression in physiological state to cry. So if someone has to repress that, imagine how damaging that is, not only physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and socially. I had recently saw this video of these guys, and they were just loving each other. And I thought they were just, hey, this is like, should be a natural platonic friendship. And, you know, the comments were crazy or whatever, but I just thought how different our society would be if affection wasn't only limited to romantic connections. If hugging and just mutual, safe connection wasn't seen as such a taboo. Like, we need physical connection. We need physical touch. And I think that the only way, particularly males, can feel that is when they are in aggressive states, such as football or sports, you know, and fighting. That's the only time it's okay to touch another person who's the same gender as you, for it to not be considered homoerotic. And I think that's just ridiculous, right? But that's a whole nother story for another time. The point of this is that we all are experiencing the same problems. And when we have this consciousness of men versus women, black versus white, etc., rich versus poor, we are actually, again, operating out of that Luciferian consciousness, where we are actually enemies to ourselves and to the universe at large. And what we should be really seeking, and I don't want to say should be as if you have to do this, but I think the universal energy is promoting unity. And that's why these changes that are happening in society, there's confusion about it. What do you mean there are multiple genders? What do you mean I have to respect your pronouns? All of that is throwing off the imbalance that has existed. That maybe it's okay to respect other people's choices that have nothing to do with your life. That maybe we don't need to control everyone else and think for everyone else. That maybe it's actually okay, if no one's being harmed, to actually allow people to exist and live whatever life they feel necessary. I do think when it comes to influence such as over children and people who may not have the same understanding, you cannot prevent this. This is going to happen. There are going to be many messages that children, people, whoever experience. What people see is more the example that is left. And that, I think, is what our hearts could be geared towards, is what example do we want to leave? What example do we want to set? It's not so much about all the information. Like, yes, you'll be bombarded with information and have to make a choice at one point if you want to live for yourself or not, and what beliefs you want to keep for yourself or not. Nobody goes through childhood unscathed. But more importantly, what example are you leaving is what's going to influence the next generation. So if you're leaving the impression that we are all one, that is what will follow. And now, when I say we're all one, that doesn't mean we are some unisex individual where we all become this monolith and we all have to think the same and we all have to be the same. That's the exact opposite. Oftentimes, understanding that we are one is understanding that we have similar experiences, understanding that we have similar fears, similar challenges. We experience emotions. Doesn't mean we experience them identically to each other, but it does mean that we can empathize and have compassion for other people while also recognizing they are a separate entity from you. So they're not going to think like you. And that's why one of the 4 agreements says, do not make assumptions. If you assume that you know someone because you met someone similar to this person, that's a recipe for a disaster. You have to actually get to know that unique individual. And a lot of times, again, going back to the narrative of corporations and propaganda type stuff, is that they try to fit one size fits all. They try to treat everyone the same. Well, if I do this for you, Johnny, I have to do this for everyone else. You know, they use this type of language to try to simplify something that cannot be simple. Life and existence here is not simple. It is complex. And trying to find a cookie cutter way to exhibit that limits our great potential and limits our great expansion. So realizing that, I hope this is still on. Yeah, I think so. But realizing that anything that tries to strip you away from the oneness that we are, that has to try to reprogram you from understanding that you have both male and female energy in you, is more afraid of you than you should ever be of it. Any system that has to go at such great lengths to try to tell you that you are a minority and should feel inferior to others, that they have more to be afraid of than you. Anyone that would try to tell you that you are a second-class citizen, or that you're not as smart as a different group, that should be a key indication there that something's off. So when we go back to creation story, and I've done an episode talking about God as a woman, and as we talk about the month of March being Women's History, I think we have to honor that God is a woman. And people can feel many different things that come up when you hear that, and that's perfectly okay. I'm not here to convert anyone or make anyone think any differently. I'm just a messenger. And we love to say God created both male and female in His image. Again, I don't think I need to point that out to you, but why is it that if we're created in His image, that is so controversial to say that God is a woman? And so I started thinking about the creation story that implemented this feeling of resentment that the gender should always feel. If you subscribe to the creation story as it's told through sacred texts, it speaks about that these genders would be cursed because of their choices and their actions. Why would a creator create you just to curse you? But anyway, knowing full well everything that's going to happen. But anyway, it's a redemption story. So at what point would there be redemption where you no longer have to fall under this curse? And that's where my Ascended Master descends and is to reveal you don't have to still follow these old traditions. You don't have to still be so binary and boxed in. But if you want to live that way, you have to abide by those laws then, those governing energies. You can't follow just one, you have to follow all of it. And a lot of people don't understand that redemption has already been paid for in that esoteric knowledge. And so people who are still operating in this conditioning of saying, and I'll give an example of the typical rhetoric that we hear is happy wife, happy life. That kind of language, the language of men might be the head, but women are the neck, and they can turn the head any way they want. All of that is garbage. All of that is disgusting, really. So it's created this fear that masculine energy has this fear that the feminine energy would want to manipulate and control, and feminine energy has this fear that masculine energy just wants to dominate and control as well. And so there's been this divisive energy fighting against each other. And as the feminine consciousness rises and is rising, it gave an opportunity for the masculine conscious to meet it. However, the exact opposite happened, where the masculine became even more inflated with their ego, because when a system has been built for you and you have sacred texts that you can use to abuse people with and to promote yourself, when that reflection is held up, that mirror of accountability is held up for those who have been privileged enough to not feel the weight of their actions, tend to respond poorly, to say the least. So, understanding that until we can acknowledge this, we will not see each other in each other. We will not see that we are all one. We will still continue to feel divisive against each other. And the plates will continue to spread more, meaning that we will see different things like AI coming up. We will see different things like other social structures coming up to provide more separation consciousness. Now, that's one alternative way that these things happen. The other mention I will give is that I've mentioned before that we all come from Africa. We all had melanated skin at one point. But the further you get away from the equator, the further you get away from the sun, and that does have a double meaning in this context, the further you get away from the sun, you lose your pigmentation. You lose your identity. Now, I was recently talking with my former loctician, and we were talking about this phenomenon. And he was saying how everywhere in nature you see melanin expressed. People of darker complexion, you see that color in nature. You see every color in nature with the exception of European descendants are the pale white color. You don't really see that in nature. And I thought, well, there are white flowers, right? There are very pure white flowers. And but the natural element of the earth is brown. And if we all continue to understand that, our belief that we were, I mean, I know there's the evolution theory as well, but even to me that has flaws in it, because if that was true, there wouldn't be any apes, I would imagine. They would have all evolved, right? They wouldn't still need to exist in their former format, would they? But yeah, if we imagine that we were created from dirt, there's one color for dirt. And yeah. So what I feel, and what we were kind of discussing, and what I've been getting these downloads on, is that when you separate yourself from divinity, you lose memory, you lose resonance, you lose pigmentation, and you essentially lose yourself. And so when you look through history, a lot of these atrocities that have happened have not been from minority groups or from people with darker complexions. A lot of the horrific things that have really carried on a legacy and left an imprint in history were typically not things that were perpetrated by people of melanin skin. But melanin people have been targeted as criminals, as violent people, as animals for so long. And you have to ask who's creating the storyline and why would the storyline need to be created. And oftentimes storylines are created to divert from what is actually happening. So this is not about race, gender in the sense of what we know it as. It's really about the programs that we have been given about them. It's really about the language we've been taught about this. It's really about the mindsets that we've understood about these things. And until we can free our mind, we will not really be free. And that is a continual daily journey I would encourage everyone to go on, is to continue to free your mind. And to understand that at the end of the day, we are all one. So you cannot hurt someone else without simultaneously hurting yourself. And you cannot look at someone that you deem less than you and not want to help them get better. I mean, you can feel that way, and many people do. And, I'm definitely not a saint. I feel that way too. And at the same time, the question is about compassion. The question is not to say, how can I hurt and abuse myself in order to help someone else? That's not the case either. That wouldn't be self-loving. Two things have to exist, of loving others and loving yourself. So, I typically think that the way that we can love others is coming from the heart space. It's not even so much about what you do or don't do. It's about, how do you view this person that's standing in front of you? When you have an opportunity to isolate someone, do you take that opportunity? When you have the opportunity to humiliate someone or to embarrass someone, do you look the other way, or do you bring attention to that? That's more along the lines of what I'm getting at. So it's not about being charitable or altruistic or whatever you want to call it. You can be a philanthropist if you want, but it's more about, you can do all of that and still not have the heart centered towards people. Are you open to hearing these people talk to you? Are you open to hearing their truths? Are you willing to be humble enough to say, maybe you don't have all the answers? Are you humble enough to say, maybe we've gotten it wrong? And that's what I want to leave with us today, is that we are all one. We have similar struggles. So even when you see someone and you go, well, that person was born with a silver spoon in their mouth, or they just get everything they want, you have no clue of their story. Have you ever spoken to said person? Or when you see someone and think, I'm better than them, or whatever the case is. I don't think people are consciously saying that necessarily, but they show it all the time in their actions. Are we willing to examine our own biases? Are we willing to see ourselves and see ourselves in others instead of judging others? But can we really learn to love others? And that, my friends, is always going to be the message. So I thank you. Please go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give this a thumbs up. Share it with your friends. Share it with your enemies. I love you all. Be well. Until next time.